Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GameClock, your new favorite sports show. I'm your host, Michael Pales, and today we're going to be talking about all of the head coaching hires. There were 10 that happened in this cycle, and I'm excited to get talking to them. And then we are also going to be breaking down who I believe is going to win the Super Bowl and talk more about that, talk about the roads that they got and took to get there, because it is a crazy thing that has happened. It's been 3 weeks, so there's a lot to talk about, but let's get started as I bring up the clock as we start talking about the head coaching hires. Now, the elephant in the room. Now, there are technically not all coaches have been hired yet. There is still one team that has a vacancy, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, everyone knows that Clint Kubiak will be signing with them, and Kubiak is currently the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seattle Seahawks, as many of you may know, I would assume so, that he is the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks who have made the Super Bowl, which means he can't be hired until after the Super Bowl. Most every other coordinator that was eligible for this cycle has been hired, and we now are going into the season with, okay, all of those head coaching positions are filled except for that one. But the biggest one, probably the most impactful in terms of franchise changing, would have to be the John Harbaugh situation. John Harbaugh got hired by the New York Giants, and now New York has a lot of young talent. We're talking about Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo. We're talking about a lot of young talent and a high draft pick. If anyone can change the culture in New York, it's gonna be John Harbaugh. Now, some people are not as high on this hire as others. Some say this is a home run. This is the best possible thing that could have happened for the New York Giants. For others, they're looking at this like this is a coach who has not succeeded since the 2020s in terms of playoff success. And I point to that and I look at it, and if you look at John Harbaugh's playoff record before he worked with Lamar Jackson versus after, he had a winning record without Lamar Jackson and a losing record with Lamar. I'm not saying it's Lamar's fault. I'm not saying that Lamar is the one to blame in terms of the Ravens' lack of playoff success. However, I will say that there have been moments where I don't think it's coaching that is the reason that the Ravens have not succeeded in the playoffs. That leads to probably one of the second most impactful hires, but is kind of aging poorly. That is Kevin Stefanski getting hired to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Stefanski was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns and got fired. And everyone was like, okay, what does this mean? Now, he had one of the least talented offensive cores in the NFL, and he is a two-time coach of the year. So in terms of talent, everyone's like, this guy's got to be it. And Matt Ryan makes a sweeping move as the head of football operations for the Atlanta Falcons and signs Kevin Stefanski as the head coach. Therefore, I think that this is a good hire. I don't know if it's a great hire. I don't know if this is the kind of hire that's going to change a franchise the way that they want. I think that Stefanski will be able to get the most out of the players that they currently have because they do have a talented roster in terms of the offensive side of the ball, and Stefanski is more of an offensive-minded head coach. We're talking about Bijan Robinson. We're talking about Kyle Pitts, who is currently a free agent. There's no guarantee he resigns. We're talking about Drake London. In terms of talent, there is talent on that Atlanta Falcons team, but who's the quarterback? Are you going to run it with Michael Penix? Are you going to run it with Kirk Cousins? Who is your quarterback? Because Michael Penix is an injury-prone guy, and Kirk Cousins is an aging veteran. Who is going to be the captain of this offense? That is probably my biggest question in terms of what Stefanski is going to do with the Falcons. That's the biggest marker in terms of me wondering what's going to happen. The next thing I want to talk about, obviously, I mentioned it early on, is the Kubiak hiring. Now, Kubiak has not been hired yet officially by the Raiders, but they've been grooming and setting up for him to be the guy. Kubiak is probably coming into one of the best young cores because he's going to get the first overall pick. He's going to pick Fernando Mendoza. You're getting one of the most shoe-in first overall draft picks since I would argue Joe Burrow in terms of a guy coming out of nowhere and saying, I'm that guy. If you look a year ago and say, ooh, who are the highest rated draft prospects? Who are the guys? You had Drew Aller, you had Nussmeier, you had Cade Klubnik. You had these guys that all had poor seasons and said, okay, Fernando Mendoza said he's that guy, won a national championship, won a Heisman. It is very Joe Burrow-esque. My only hope is that the Raiders will approach this differently than the Bengals did, because right now there is a lot of parallels in terms of high talent and all of these things. Burrow was going into a worse situation, I will say. However, the Raiders need to recognize that the moment they draft Fernando Mendoza, they need to pursue aggressively offensive linemen. They need to not be in a situation like these other teams where their franchise quarterback is getting injured every single year. They need to not have a situation where he's not protected. A lot of people might come from the mindset of, hey, if you build a good offensive line, you can make subpar quarterbacks better. And that's probably the case in most cases, but you don't say no when Fernando is sitting there right in front of you. Now, next hiring that I want to talk about is Tennessee Titans hire Robert Saleh. Now, Robert Saleh had a tenure as the head coach for the New York Jets a couple of years ago, and then he was the defensive coordinator this past year with San Francisco. He coached one of the most disciplined defenses in the NFL. One of the most disciplined defenses in the NFL. However, and he worked with some of the worst talent. Like, in terms of injuries, he did not have anyone. And that's kind of the situation he's walking into with Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't have the defensive talent that any of these other teams did. Realistically, he's coming into the worst situation outside of the fact that you know who your quarterback is. There are other teams where you do not know who your quarterback is. But what I will say is that the Tennessee Titans know who their quarterback is, and it's Cam Ward. They know that that's who it's going to be, and they're going to pursue like that mindset is. They're going to make sure that they pursue aggressively. They have some of the most cap room in the NFL. They can go out and sign major free agents. They can go out and sign a Kyle Pitts, make him the weapon that he has the potential to be. They can go out and hire different guys and pursue guys in free agency because they have the cap room. They have almost $100 million in cap room. They're number one. So that's a team that I could really think make a splash in this offseason. They also have a top 5 draft pick. They're probably going to go get an edge rusher or someone that is going to be able to help shore up aging Jeffrey Simmons. Next up, I want to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I would like to note, yes, I'm aware there's a Rise of Red Sea thing. I'm going to try to remain as objective as possible, but they are my team. They're the team I've grown up with. Mike LaFleur is not the guy I wanted at head coach. Plain and simple. He's not. I wanted Clint Kubiak. That is who I wanted as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. And the moment that they couldn't get him, I said, "Okay, let's get an offensive-minded head coach." Because we've done the defensive-minded head coach thing. We did it with Jonathan Gannon, and it did not succeed. Now, I will say also, Jonathan Gannon did not look nearly as good. There was a lot of things in terms of quarterback play. There was question marks, a lot of things. But what I will say is that I think that this team needed a fresh start and needed an offensive mind. My worry, though, is this a Kingsbury kind of hire? The difference is, though, is that Kingsbury did not come from a coaching tree the way that LaFleur is coming from. And some people even would say, hey, this is one of the worst hires in this cycle. They should have got Chris Shula, who was the DC for the Rams. And because as an OC, when he was with the New York Jets, he had a lackluster year. But the other thing is that it's the New York Jets. I don't discredit anyone for their tenure with the Jets. Genuinely, it is one of the worst organizations in terms of just spitting out and chewing up anyone. Sam Darnold is a Super Bowl quarterback, and he was the guy that was in the New York Jets. The New York Jets cannot succeed. It doesn't matter. The only guy that has succeeded with the Jets in the last over a decade, in the 2000s, is Mark Sanchez, who took them to an AFC championship. Like, people forget that Mark Sanchez is the most successful Jets quarterback since Joe Namath. He is. I would argue, I'm someone who's argued that being a Cardinals fan is one of the worst fandoms you can be. It's being a Jets fan. Truly. I looked at it. I looked up the math. It's insane. But regardless, I don't discount anyone for their tenures with the New York Jets to just kind of bring it together. I think Mike LaFleur is the guy that the Cardinals need. They needed an offensive mind. They have weapons. They have guys that can perform. They have Trey McBride. They have the number 1 tight end in the NFL. And I say that without any semblance of hesitation. Trey McBride is the best tight end in the NFL right now. They have Marvin Harrison Jr., who has not performed the way he wanted, but the issue is that they've had Drew Petzing as the offensive coordinator. He does not know how to set up schemes and have players succeed, and the only reason that Jacoby Brissett succeeded more than Kyler Murray is because they don't know how to use Kyler Murray. But what I will say is Kyler Murray's probably on the outs. LaFleur is going to have to go find a guy that he can pour into, that he can set up. I think they're going to have to pursue a Mac Jones, going to have to pursue a Malik Willis. They're going to have to find a guy that can be good, maybe even great, but at least would be a good bridge quarterback, a guy that can say, hey, we have talent, we need to freaking win, because it's not going to happen if you continue to do the same thing over and over again. And that gets us through half of the head coaching hires. I'm very glad that I got through half of them. Okay. We're going back at it. We're going into the second half of these coaching hires. Now, the next one is Jesse Minter for the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is probably a top 3 hire, genuinely. Jesse Minter is a brilliant defensive mind, and he is taking over a defense that has been successful in the past. It obviously wasn't successful last year, but there were a lot of question marks as to why, but I think Jesse Minter is the kind of guy that can say, hey, hire a good OC, hire a decent OC, and say, okay, Lamar, do your thing. I've got the defense. Let's succeed. Because we're seeing more success from defensive-minded head coaches. Mike Macdonald and Mike Vrabel are both defensive-minded head coaches. And they both just turned their teams from 4-13 to 13-4. These are teams that went from being bottom feeders of their division to being top teams in their division going into the Super Bowl. Both defensive-minded head coaches. Understand that the defense has somehow shifted. There seems to be constant ebb and flow in the NFL between whether defense or offense is the thing that is dominant in that era. And right now it's defense, and you're seeing Mike Macdonald succeed. You're seeing Mike Vrabel succeed. I have a feeling that I think Robert Saleh is going to succeed. I think that these defensive-minded head coaches are seeing success, and I think that the Ravens wanted a bite of that, and they went and got Jesse Minter, who I'd argue was the best DC that got hired in this cycle. He was. I think he was the best defensive coordinator out of all the guys I'm seeing right now. He is the best defensive coordinator, and I think he was the best hire here on the list of 10 head coaching hires. Now, next up is going to be Joe Brady. Now, Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, and they just said, hey, we're going to promote in-house. I think this was one of the dumbest decisions they could have made. I think you have Josh Allen. They're functioning. One, this organization is failing. They have done so poorly in supporting one of the best quarterbacks of the generation in terms of supporting him. They've given him one weapon in his entire time in terms of wide receivers. He's had Stephon Diggs. That's it. And even Stephon Diggs was never a top 10, was never a top 3 wide receiver. He wasn't. He was never a top 3 wide receiver. And so you just are not giving him the talent he needs, and all he has had is James Cook. And all this feels like a nothing burger in terms of the hiring. They said, hey, Joe Brady, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Come be the head coach. I think McDermott's a good head coach. I do. I think he wants to win. But I think he's getting hemorrhaged and handicapped by a front office that doesn't know what they're doing. They even said overtly, for a player that is on their roster, they did not want to hire him. They didn't want to draft him. That is an insane thing to say. They're placing blame because they know that they are at fault. And the Buffalo Bills the Bills Mafia needs to recognize that it is the front office that is the issue, not the head coach. Sean McDermott, I think, is going to be a guy that's going to get hired by another team in the next coaching cycle, and he is going to be shown as a guy that was hemorrhaged by his organization and not because he was a poor coach. But I think Joe Brady, they wanted to keep the status quo. He will do all right. They will still succeed, but that's because of Josh Allen, not because of the head coaching. Jeff Hafley got hired by the Dolphins. He was the defensive coordinator for the Packers. This is not the worst hire. No, I'll say it. It was the worst hire in this cycle. Jeff Hafley was a good DC. But the only reason that his defense was as good as it was this year was Micah Parsons. This Packers defense went from being a top defense in the NFL to a mediocre defense after the loss of Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons was the reason that they got so good. Sure, he had some good thoughts, good ideas, but the other thing is that he's getting put in one of the worst situations in the NFL. Like genuinely one of the worst situations in the NFL. The Dolphins have no cap room. The Dolphins have a quarterback that needs to get traded and go away, but has one of the worst contracts, second worst contract of a quarterback that needs to be traded. Kyler has the worst because he has $90 million in terms of cap room in the next 2 years. It's insane. But regardless, Jeff Hafley's getting one of the worst situations. He's either going to be a one and done. He might be a one and done. Like, that's how bad this might be. Not because Jeff Hafley's not a good head coach, but just because the Dolphins situation he's walking into is one of the worst in the NFL. He's going to be sitting here being like, I don't know what to do. And he's going to do well in terms of defense, but even then he doesn't have talent. Unless the organization says, hey, you got 2 years, figure it out. I don't think it's going to be a situation that he's going to be gone so quickly. Okay. Todd Monken. The Browns hired the Ravens offensive coordinator. This doesn't make sense to me. Because the thing is, there were other opportunities. Vance Joseph was on the market. Chris Shula was still on the market. Like, there are guys that are high-level, high-caliber head coaching candidates, and you go for Todd Monken. Like, it is saying, hey, the guy that has been truly succeeding as a result of Lamar Jackson is the guy we're going to focus on. Like, truly. Like that's what's happening. And I think this is going to be poor. He's getting one of the best defenses in the NFL, but he's getting one of the worst offenses. He's been able to develop quarterbacks. I will say, he has been shown to develop quarterbacks well in the NFL in his time. He was one of the guys that was there to help Baker develop before they said, screw you, Baker, and kicked him to the curb. He has helped develop Lamar Jackson. Like, he's good at developing quarterbacks, but the Browns don't have a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders did not play to the level where I'm like, yeah, we should bring in a guy that helps develop him. Like, Shedeur will be able to develop from a bad quarterback to a mediocre quarterback. That's the best that's going to happen. Shedeur is not a good quarterback. The fact that he's in the Pro Bowl is a joke. Shedeur threw 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and Shedeur is not a good quarterback. I feel bad for Monken because he's getting into a situation where he does not have a quarterback, and he's going to have to ride off the coattails of his defense because it's not going to succeed. And that brings me to the last hire. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin stepped down for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers had the chance to say, hey, let's blow it up. Let's rebuild. Let's pick a guy that is young, that's going to be in it for the long haul. That's the next guy that we could have a shot at getting a McVay, getting a Mike McDonald, getting a wonder kid that could be successful. But instead, they said, nah, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You want to know what we're going to do? Win 10 games, lose 7, and make the playoffs, and lose in the first round. And what did they do? They went and hired Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is a brilliant offensive mind. I will say that. I need to not bash on McCarthy that much. He was good when he was with the Cowboys, but the thing with the Cowboys situation was that he made a good offense, but the team was mediocre. Hey, what are you going to do? We're going to get first in the playoffs. We're going to win our division, and then we're going to get first round exited. That's what he does. It's what the Cowboys do. It's what McCarthy does, and it's what the Steelers do. The Steelers said, hey, let's keep the status quo. They didn't take their shot, and they're going to pay for it over the next 5 years because McCarthy's going to do enough to keep his job, but he's not going to do enough to win them Super Bowls. Because what is the point of hiring a head coach? The job of a head coach is to win Super Bowls in the NFL. Plain and simple. That's what it's meant to do. You're meant to run the team and win Super Bowls. That's what you're meant to do. The GM builds the team for you. You get handed it and say, cool, let's go win a Super Bowl. That's your job. And Mike McCarthy is not the guy that's going to win you Super Bowls. He'll get you success, but that's the Pittsburgh Steelers way. You don't win Super Bowls. Last time McCarthy has won a Super Bowl, I would say he's a Super Bowl winner, but it was with the Packers years ago. I don't even think I remember. I wasn't even conscious at the time that he won a Super Bowl with the Packers. It was with Aaron Rodgers. Anyone's going to win a Super Bowl with young, prime Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers was like that. But McCarthy has not shown in his past tenures that he is the kind of guy that says, yes, I'm going to help win Super Bowls. He's the kind of guy that says, I'm going to help you make the playoffs. And for some teams, that would have been great. But for the Steelers, who is one of the franchises that has the most Super Bowl rings, they're tied for most with the Patriots with 6. You are one of the most storied franchises in the NFL. You are a team that should be fighting for Super Bowls. This is a team that has been successful throughout its entire existence. And in the past 5 to 10 years, they have said, we are okay with mediocrity in terms of making the playoffs and winning and losing in the first round, because that's what they've pursued. Since Big Ben left, they've had no direction. They've been able to squeak in. They need a quarterback if they're going to have a chance. And if they don't hit, they're going to be consistently a team that gets first round exited. They'll make it, but that's about it. And that's my take on the head coaching hires. So as the clock runs out, we're going to have a quick little discussion as halftime happens. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am planning on starting a new show. I don't have the logo yet. I really want to get it going, but GameClock will still exist. It's still around, but this is the second to last stream for the season of the NFL. I would love to hear if you guys want to hear me cover other sports, but something I'm really passionate and well knowledgeable about is Formula One. So I will be doing a new show called Track Time. Track Time will be following the F1 season. It's going to be great to see, and I'm excited to talk about Formula One. It's something I'm passionate about, and I'm excited to share that passion with you guys and talk about something that I am very knowledgeable on. So I'm quite excited for that. But now we're going to get in. First off, I'm going to get water, because talking about head coaches took it out of me. We're going to be talking about the Super Bowl and the road to the playoffs for both of these teams that are in the Super Bowl. As the third quarter starts, elephant in the room, the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots made the Super Bowl. I did not predict that the New England Patriots or the Seattle Seahawks would make the Super Bowl. I said it was going to be the Niners and Bills, and boy, did that age poorly. The Bills one didn't age as poorly. It was a very close game, but the Niners one aged poorly. I mean, the Seahawks put 41 on the San Francisco 49ers. So, not the best prediction. This is why predictions. I love this sport. It's so unpredictable. But what has defined these two teams? For the Seattle Seahawks, you have Mike Macdonald, young coach, has been very successful defensively, has now produced one of the best defenses in my memory. This is as good as the Legion of Boom, if not better. Genuinely. Therefore, I think that this team is a very, very strong team. This team has fought tooth and nail. They got the first seed. They went 14-3 or 13-4. I can't remember exactly which. But they had one of the best records in the NFL. They got the first seed. They absolutely demolished the Niners. They won in a close fashion against the LA Rams. And then they made it to the Super Bowl. And the Seattle Seahawks have fought and built and gone against one of the best divisions in the NFL. Like, excluding this team, the NFC West is one of the best divisions in the NFL. Truly. You had 3 teams that were all competing for the number 1 seed. You had teams that all were beating up on each other consistently. They nearly knocked each other out of the first seed. But Seattle's path to winning was beating divisional opponents, people they had seen twice before that. So they had a really, really tough job to get to that Super Bowl, and they had won a very hard, tough schedule. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots had the easiest strength of schedule throughout the entire season. If there is a graphic that was shown in terms of regular season victories, where every single team that they played either had their coach fired, retired, or was still there, but it's like maybe 2 teams out of their total schedule didn't get fired, which is flabbergasting. Then you have them in the playoffs. They go against a Chargers team where Justin Herbert has no one blocking him. They showed the PFF grades. Every single player was either last or second to last in their position. Then you have, their defensive line did everything in their power to screw Justin Herbert, and I swear Herbert's going to have flashbacks and PTSD from that game. but they played a team that is not necessarily the best. Then they go and play against the Houston Texans, where CJ Stroud turns the ball over 4 times. Their defense scored as many points as their offense. If not, they didn't score as many points, but they put them in position to score. When a defense is that good against a team that has a quarterback that is playing that poorly, you know what the result is going to be. And then it comes to the AFC Championship. And they go and face a backup Jarrett Stidham against the Broncos defense. The Broncos defense held Drake May down. Literally, Drake May could not do anything. Drake May was struggling. He scored 1 touchdown, and a lot of what he was doing was on his legs. But Jarrett Stidham couldn't show up. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. There's a lot of things you look back on, but it was a 10-7 game. This offense worries me for the New England Patriots. And I will say, I've been a Sam Darnold doubter. I have doubted Sam Darnold at every turn. He is someone that I saw what happened in Minnesota because I live in Minnesota currently. I have a lot of friends that are Vikings fans. And I saw the choke job that happened in last year's playoffs. And what I will tell you is that Sam Darnold's a different man this year. Sam Darnold is a different Sam Darnold, genuinely. He consistently is showing up in moments that he needs to. He's playing clutch. And a lot of people would not have associated Sam Darnold 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I think, was when he joined the NFL, as clutch. This was a man that was seeing ghosts. And now people are calling him the Ghostbuster because this man has said, screw the ghosts that I was seeing. We're going to go succeed. And he has. And he is consistently, he is in an offense that is dominated by the run game. Kenneth Walker is currently having one of his best parts of his season because Charbonnet went down. But Charbonnet also, that 1-2 punch between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker was insane. But a run dominant defense. But then he goes and says, yeah, I'm going to make Jackson Smith and Jigba the offensive player of the year. He hasn't won it yet. However, I have a very I have a very sneaking suspicion that we are going to see Jackson Smith and Jigba become offensive player of the year this season. One of the best offensive receiver seasons we saw was Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that came at the hands of Sam Darnold. I think people when you have wide receivers win offensive player of the year, oftentimes they're associated with an elite quarterback. Some of the ones I can name off the top of my head: Cooper Kupp had Matt Stafford. I think Jamar Chase might have won it. Had Joe Burrow. Understand that offensive player of the year, Jackson Smith and Jigba is playing out of his mind. He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now. He is easily top 5, if not top 3. This season he was number 1. Sam Darnold is playing at a very high caliber, is playing clutch, is winning in tough, tight, close moments. And that was something that he didn't do in the past. And that is where I look at it and I'm like, I will admit I was wrong about Sam Darnold. Truly. And now you're trusting him to win a Super Bowl. There are some questions. But that puts me on to the other quarterback, Drake May. Drake May had an MVP caliber season. I don't think he should win MVP. I think it should go to Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford had one of the best seasons in terms of passing that I've seen in recent memory. But Drake May was playing at a high caliber. And then he started going and playing against some top defenses. He started facing teams that were good teams. And he hasn't looked as good as he did when he was playing the Jets twice a year and the Dolphins twice a year. And once he started showing up in these defensive games, his legs won him that game against the Broncos, I will say. But consistently, it feels like Drake may not be at the caliber that we thought he might be. He has been playing a little bit below what he was playing in the regular season. That leads me to kind of what I want to talk about. Would you rather have Drake May or Sam Darnold? Now, some people, obviously, there's one side of the camp that goes, obviously, I want Drake May. MVP caliber season, has shown that he can get it done with the legs and the arm. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Drake May young. And then on Sam Darnold's side, you have, bounced around a lot of teams, has played for the Jets, Panthers, 49ers, Vikings, and Seahawks. He's on his 5th team. Older guy. Doesn't really have the legs for it. good arm talent, but not great arm talent. But I'd take Sam Darnold, and I'll tell you why. Sam Darnold has shown that through adversity, he has gotten better and developed. He has continued to play better in moments. He is a playoff riser this season. In the past, people would be like, oh, he's a playoff sinker. He gets worse when the playoffs come around. But no. Sam Darnold has played the best football of his career in these past 2 games. He has. It hasn't been against the toughest. No, it is. Screw that. It's been against some of the toughest teams in the NFL. Some of the baddest mofos in the NFL. And he is going and saying, I'm here. This is my turf. It is. He played against these teams at home and he said, I'm going to win this. And he did. And he did just that. Sam Darnold is showing that he is that guy. Drake May has not shown me stuff in this playoffs that says, I'm that guy. Sure, he succeeded, but that's off the back of one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have shut down every quarterback they've played against. These teams cannot score against this defense. 3 points against the Chargers, 7 points against the Broncos, and I can't remember the Texans game right off the top of my head, but I know it wasn't more than 2 scores. Truly, Drake May has been carried by his defense. And Sam Darnold, yes, has a great defense behind him, but has been succeeding because of that. Yes, it's been succeeding because of that defense. But Sam Darnold is rising and continuing to develop and get better throughout this playoff season. And that leads me kind of just to continue. I think Sam Darnold is a better quarterback in this matchup. It truly is. He truly is. And I will talk more in this fourth quarter about what I think is going to happen, because I do think you guys can probably infer, judging by how I'm talking, who I think is going to win the Super Bowl, no matter how much it hurts being one of those fans. But I'll get to that in 6 seconds as this slowly winds down. I'm going to have to drag this out for 10 minutes, guys. I'm going to leave you waiting. I'm joking. I'm not going to do that. 10 minutes starts. Put the 4s up. Fourth quarter going. Okay. Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots. Who do I think is going to win? I think it's the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I'm someone who, whenever I don't have a dog in the race, whenever there's not a team that I'm like, I know a guy on that team, I support a guy on that team, that is my team, I've never said that. Whenever I've supported a team or been like, that's a guy that I really like or a player I really like, I normally cheer them on. But most of the time, if I don't have a dog in the race, I want a good game. And I am so worried that this is going to be a bloodbath. The way the offense for the Patriots has been playing has not given me hope that the Seattle Seahawks defense is not going to decimate them. Also, if you're someone who doesn't like strong defenses, learn to enjoy strong defenses, because that's what you're going to be seeing a whole lot of in this Super Bowl. Both these teams, yes, they've given up points. Like, understand that Rams game was a very back and forth game between the Rams and the Seahawks. However, that offense that the Rams had was number 1 in the NFL. The only reason that team put up so many points was because it was the best offense in the NFL. The Patriots are not the best offense in the NFL. Nothing is revealed to me that when they play tough defenses that they can show up. They played one of the best defenses in the NFL and in the Denver Broncos, and they put up 10 points. Now, yes, did weather conditions get very aggressive towards the end and impact that game? Yes, I will say weather did play a factor. The other game I can point to is the Houston Texans game. Well, Drake May constantly got a short field, and his defense scored touchdowns, and C.J. Stroud forgot how to play football. Chargers game, they put up 16 points against a defense that was run by Jesse Minter, who was brilliant and was able to stop them, but again, they didn't put up that many points. When Sam Darnold played a poor defense, which he did play a poor defense, he put up 41 points. I think not all of it was 41 because Rashid Shaheed had a return touchdown. But the Seattle Seahawks were able to score 41 points against the San Francisco 49ers. And if I'm not mistaken, the Rams game, they scored something like 27. Don't have the numbers in front of me. That is the crazy thing about this game, is that I think if I'm going with my gut, I know the Seattle Seahawks are going to win. There's no world in which, for me, I think the Seattle Seahawks aren't going to win. If I'm a betting man, I put money on the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not a betting man. nor do I condone betting. I don't think it's healthy. But I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to win by a landslide. The thing I hope that isn't going to happen is that it's a blowout, because blowouts are not a lot of fun to watch unless it's your team. Like, genuinely, unless it is your team that is the team that's blowing the other team out, or you really, really don't like the other team that they're playing against and it is a hate watch for you. Blowouts aren't fun to watch. I'm a fan of strong defensive games because it means that you're going to be seeing some action in terms of that's a great play call. That's some great stuff. You might have a punt return touchdown. Like, there's more opportunity for special teams to play a factor in defensive games. But when you have a blowout, there's just not that. And a shootout's always fun. Everyone loves a shootout. But this is a situation where the Seattle Seahawks are just going to win. Like, credit where credit is due. The Patriots have played a heck of a season, but they've had one of the easiest paths to the Super Bowl in modern memory. Truly, they have. I can't remember a time where they have had this week of teams. They've had played against a Chargers team that had no offensive line. They played against a Houston Texans team where CJ Stroud could not keep the ball in his own hands. And you had played against a Broncos team that was without their starting quarterback. The Patriots had one of the easiest paths to the Super Bowl, and they're going to figure out what it means to be an NFC team this season. This season, because they're playing the Seattle Seahawks, and it's going to be crazy. And I'm aware that there are currently 5 minutes left, 5:30 left in this live stream, and I'm kind of know where it's going. I know it's done, and what's next for these teams. We'll hypothesize right now about what happens for both of these teams if they win. Seattle Seahawks, if they win the Super Bowl, they hoist up the Lombardi. They are back. One, they carry on the Pope conspiracy. Every time a new Pope has been elected, the Seattle Seahawks have made the Super Bowl. They made the Super Bowl, and one of the 2 times they won the Super Bowl. So, the Pope conspiracy is true. But also, they hoist the Lombardi. Sam Darnold's locked in for a few years with the Seattle Seahawks. They have a good running back core. Kenneth Walker is a free agent, but I have a feeling he'd resign. Zach Charbonnet, recovering from injury, but would be back. Their defense, a lot of their guys are still under contract and will be. They have a chance to run it back. But again, they're facing off in one of the hardest divisions in the NFL. And we don't know what teams like the Arizona Cardinals might be able to do with new coordinators, new head coaches. And the Seattle Seahawks are going to figure out who's their next OC because they're losing Clint Kubiak, and they're going to have to figure it out. But the Seattle Seahawks are going to be able to walk and have that parade and know that they won. Sam Darnold is going to be the first of that 2018 draft class, which features Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. And he'd be the first to hoist a Lombardi. He's the first to make the Super Bowl. He's going to be a first to hoist Lombardi. And that's something he has over every single one of those guys. Every single one of those guys, franchise guys. Guys that have had success, been fan favorites. Sam Darnold constantly overlooked in his entire career because he started with the New York Jets. We're going to get to see him succeed and prove the haters wrong. Now let's go on the flip side. Because regardless of how definitively I think the Seahawks are going to win, there's always a chance. It's football. Any given Sunday. New England Patriots, they hoist Lombardi. They become the winningest franchise in the NFL. 7 Super Bowls. Mike Vrabel gets another ring, finally as a coach and not as a player. Drake May begins the start of a new dynasty. Possibly the start of a new dynasty. Drake May tries to take up the reins that what Brady left, the house that Brady built. Stephon Diggs probably retires, rides into the sunset as he hoists the Lombardi. But Drake May is going to run it back, not as an MVP, because this year the next year he'll win the MVP finally. And both these teams are teams that I think are not going to have the Super Bowl hangover. Both these teams are teams that are going to be very successful after this. I still have 3 minutes and 37 seconds, guys. I'm really trying to fill time right now. This was one of those weeks where there's not as much to talk about. The Pro Bowl is about to happen, but it's a flag football tournament, and the Pro Bowl is dying, so there's not much to talk about there. Outside of the fact that Shedeur should never made the Pro Bowl. That man, he did not deserve to make the Pro Bowl. There's no world in which you tell me that he is more deserving than other AFC quarterbacks that didn't make it. Like, he was an alternate, but there's no world in which you tell me Bo Nix doesn't. I know Bo Nix couldn't. There's no world in which you don't tell me that. I'm trying to think of other AFC quarterbacks that could have. Aaron Rodgers, even. Like, Aaron Rodgers deserved it more than he did. Truly. But either way, the Pro Bowl is dying. There's a minute left. I might call it here. Just because. No. And then I will stand on this. The Seattle Seahawks are going to be the team that hoists the Lombardi this upcoming Sunday. Sam Darnold will be a Super Bowl champion. The Seahawks will be a champion once again. And a part of me will die because I am a Cardinals fan. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, thank you so much for watching Game Clock. It's been an absolute pleasure. I am so excited to see you guys next week for the final Game Clock of the season. And then hopefully, y'all will tune in to Track Time. Thank you, good evening, and good night.